xây tương thân tình trong đạo Phật, tùy khác màu nhưng một tôn sư. Hôm nay đây cùng nhau họp mặt, quyết noi theo đường Phật giáo Hoàng Dương.
Namo Satika Manifa. And so we're back after the break, and so let's continue off of views on our world environment. And so my question next to you is, like, how do we deal with ourselves into knowing if action may be considered within your means of boundary or within the means of waste, and how can that lead us into kind of polluting ourselves less in terms of having the three poisons within us? Like, as we consume, what should we do to be mindful of it being too excessive, like our habits? Or
well, you have to. There's a famous term called "know thyself," meaning that you have to know yourself, right? Know the limits on what your consumption when it comes to food, right? Know how much consumption when you're drinking water. Know the consumption when you're drinking coffee. Or just knowing the boundary of your own body and understanding yourself and not going beyond that. The Buddha taught that when we should eat food and use food as a medicine for us to continue on our journey on the spiritual enlightenment. We're not eating the food just to enjoy the food and just pigging out, but we're using the food as a means, as a way, as a medicine for us to go from point A to point B on a healthy manner, right? And we should never overindulge in anything. Overindulgence leads to drifting. Overindulgence means that you lack self-discipline, you lack self-awareness, you lack the key element for you to stay in control of your own body and your own mind. And so when you learn how to control yourself through self-discipline, through right effort, you learn how to just take whatever you need and to eat whatever you need to be healthy enough for you to continue forward, right? And never to the point where you're overindulged. The Buddha taught, when you're practicing meditation or you're practicing Vipassana meditation, the amount of food that you eat should never be more than the fist that you have in one sitting. If you eat more than one fist of food, it's going to be sitting in your stomach to the point where it's very difficult for you to practice meditation. Because what happens if you eat too much? You become sleepy, right? When you become sleepy, it's very difficult for you to develop mental awareness. Because now, with all that food inside yourself, you enter that whole stage called food coma, and you're feeling sleepy, you're drifting away, you're lacking the mental awareness for you to stay sharp. And so the Buddha taught that we should only eat just a fistful of food, enough for it to be inside your stomach, that won't be too much that leads you to lose control of your mental awareness. And so we had to practice on that. But I want to add more to what we asked to the last question, was that we have to learn to not only take, but to give. That's where practicing compassion comes in, right? If we use a tree and we tear down a tree to make paper, to do whatever we need to do with tree, that means we have a moral obligation to plant another tree, right? We take something, but we have to give it back. There has to be a process of give and take.
Right.
But right now, the consciousness of the world is take.
Right.
But even the resources on earth is finite.
Yeah.
It's not infinite. Right? And so if we continue our consumption on the earth without giving back, we're gonna reach to a point where we're gonna deplete our natural resources.
Yes.
And then we basically drain the planet empty. And that's where awareness and social awareness and just the overall awareness of not only mind, body, but our social environment and our economic environment and our just natural environment, protecting the earth and realizing that we only have one earth. Let's protect the one we have. Preserve it for the future generations.
Oh yeah, so this knowledge doesn't just encompass our knowledge spiritually, but also our understanding of our knowledge materially as well.
Yes.
So the Buddha kind of extends his truth and teachings to guide us not only on a spiritual path, but amongst things, because he's fully aware of us consuming as the needs of life.
Yes.
And he's fully aware of anything taken to excess is a disadvantage to ourselves.
Yes.
And so kind of how I figure one of the next questions is, as we learn to discipline ourselves in terms of knowing what's too much in terms of consumption of food, but how does disciplining us in terms of action, like is it always good to have a young person, active less on a device, or is it good to cultivate, if they're interested in technology, then just give them as much as he wants, or if it's always good to kind of, live in a way that if he disciplines his consumption with regular outlets, like now people watch each other, the kids watch each other play games instead of playing it themselves. How do you kind of have discipline in terms of, as a child, can you explain that in a way?
The generation now, I grew up in a generation where we played video games. We had the Nintendo, the original Nintendo that came out was my first console. But even then, when I was younger, my parents only allowed me to play it an hour a week. The majority of the time we had to study, we had to, focus on school, and it's only on Friday nights at 8 p.m. we are allowed to play until 9 p.m. Right? And that was during our time. Now I feel like kids in the generation now, they have no self-discipline when it comes to technology. And they're solely relying all their time that they're doing on technology. Like you said, I've seen kids where they just sit down and they just watch other people play games.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you do that? It's just a waste of time, right? If you're playing a video game, if you play an RPG game, for example, right? Final Fantasy, you have to spend, 100 hours trying to level up the character. Right? And then they invest so much time going through different missions and then leveling up and then finding the skills that they can use to defeat the boss at a later time. But what if someone would take that same amount of hours, 100 hours, and devote it into their own life?
Yeah.
Reading and learning and developing their own skills and going out and playing this game of life, right? With the skills that they've learned through their own practice. And winning in the game of life. Why don't people do that instead of investing time in a video game? Yeah,
it's curious as to why we're so drawn towards that fictitious thing. Yet right in front of us, there's daily activities to attend to and an enormous amount of hobbies and things to kind of do. A lifestyle is to be a monk and as our livelihood. But it's anyone's choice to practice the same things as we practice in order to achieve the same goals as we want to achieve, which is the elimination of our own ignorance and acquiring wisdom to, have that essence of happiness. And so I hope it's kind of not to be so strict on, the games, but then those kind of things are huge distractions. And we have fidget spinners to distract from the distractions, and that distraction became its own distraction.
Right now, we're just living in a pool of distractions. And it's taking away from the focus that if you develop yourself, if you develop your mind, if you develop your skills, you can win in this game of life.
Yeah, it's not
everyone, the producers, they create distractions, and we as a consumer consume it up.
Yeah.
And then it takes us away from the bigger picture on what we need to do to improve the quality of our own life. If people have the self-discipline that they need to control, then they won't be in a decision to
become regretful. Of what would occur after lack of discipline. And so I hope if anyone here, has the time to want to learn more about what we practice, we also open our doors to our temple to you. And if you have time to just walk around, not during our actual time, because Wednesday, 7:30, we do chanting, walking meditation, and discussion of Dharma every Wednesday night.
In English.
But in English, actually. And so it's very crucial if you have the time to come and to practice with us. And so if you feel like anytime you would want to have any hope or rationalize your thoughts onto how living with optimism through the Buddha teachings is a way of benefit to you, then immediately consider that as a choice or opportunity during a free Wednesday for you to come, because we are delighted to have anyone listen and to learn, because as you grow and set a seed forth, a positive cause will eventually lead you to a bunch of positive effects in return.
Yes.
So if you grow yourself spiritually, then in turn spiritually things come back at you tenfold. And so
just to
without
repeat
further
on that, it's every Wednesday night at 7:30 at the UFAP Temple in San Gabriel. Again, that's every Wednesday night at 7:30 at the UFAP Temple. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to continue further. We hope to see you next week in the future episode. Ahida.
Xây tương thân tình trong đạo Phật, tùy khác màu